we can't really account for any pictograms that aren't man-made. And the thing is, guys, is that I believe that there's a serious argument for serious research of this subject, but it's been done in the wrong areas, because we've got the bent not broken polemic, which has been with us now, plaguing us for the past 30 years. But you've also got then the elongated nodes argument. My definition of a true crop circle is one that's done with a respect to the land in which it's placed, because that's a big part of it, guys. We are actually embedding these things in ancient sites. But I started to hear stories from crop circle makers, generally secondhand, about high strangeness events. They were talking about time shifts, they were talking about UAPs, they were talking about dream-driven events, synchronicities that were beyond the realms of coincidence. That I hadn't got the answers for everything. I can answer your scientific points on the blown nodes and that sort of thing, but when it comes to the esoterics of it, I do feel as if we're being guided. But what I don't know genuinely is there is a colossal mystery here, but it's not necessarily the mystery that you want, okay? Because it's connected to people. And I say to people, once you insert humans into this equation, the mystery is far deeper than birth flying saucers. The mystery is something that's interactive. There was some cattle, a herd of cattle, 2 fields away from this crop circle, so they couldn't possibly have seen it, and why would they be interested? And they said, as one, they just got up and they stampeded through this fence, and they stampeded over this field, and they stampeded into the other field with the crop circle, and they just nestled their asses and they just sat down within the confines of this crop circle, which is crazy.
The following program is presented for general information, education and entertainment purposes only, and is not intended to be advice of any kind. The content, views, thoughts and opinions expressed in this program are those of the individuals involved. The use of information on this program is at the user's own discretion.
All right, Stuart, are you ready for something different today?
I am, yeah. What have you got in store, Mike?
So I want to first, a couple times in other episodes, we've talked about if people out there want to reach out to us and talk about their experiences, they can do so in an anonymous way. And if, this is kind of how that would be. We're going into incognito mode today, although we're not actually going to be talking with an experiencer per se.
Hang on, is this someone who holds a clearance or something? Is that why they don't want to be seen, or what's happening?
I don't believe they hold a clearance, but for their own, I guess you could say, sort of protection, they can't reveal who they are. The reason for that is because they are a self-proclaimed retired crop circle maker.
Okay, this is interesting. Are we talking about the people who claim to make the crop circles with the boards, or using some technology, government technology? What's happening here?
Well, I mean, I don't know all of the details. I know that there are for sure people in the past who have made crop circles with boards on ropes and things like that. This particular person apparently has participated in that a bunch of times. And I do have to disclaim right off the bat that, which is also why they can't reveal who they are, making crop circles anywhere in the world is illegal. You're trespassing on someone's property. You're destroying their property. The farmers make a living on their crops, so you're destroying crops, and definitely frowned upon. We don't condone it, and nobody should ever do that. But this person has reached out because they want to talk about some things that apparently, when some of the people who make the crop circles do it, phenomenal things happen before, during, and after, like weird shit when they're making these things.
I've got some questions that's a bit along the lines of what came first, the chicken or the egg? Why did they start doing the crop circles? So, yeah, this is going to be interesting, Mike.
It certainly is. So I don't know this person's identity, and, he just goes by pseudonymously Citizen D, and he's, presumably somewhere in the UK. So it's going to be interesting for sure. And this will be our first time that we're speaking with somebody who isn't sort of showing themselves or saying fully who they are, but for good reason. So, interestingly enough, the first documented report of a crop circle, although potentially a legend or a myth, is often attributed to a short booklet published in the year 1678 in England. And this little booklet is known as the Mowing Devil, which describes a circle of trampled or mowed oats in a field, supposedly caused by a devilish entity.
Wow. I wonder if they do some home handyman work. I could use a bit of that around the house, Mike, on the weekend.
The dust devil. I mean, there was anyway. Let's not get too far off the path here. But I mean, seriously, 1678 allegedly. That's almost 350 years ago, and quite baffling to me, actually, because the first flight, the airplane, wasn't invented till 1903, and the Zeppelin. Yeah, I wanted to go over this with you too, because this is quite a curiosity for me. The Zeppelin was first conceived in the year 1874 and then developed in detail in 1893. But apparently, allegedly, the first Zeppelin flight wasn't even until the year 1900. But the weird part about that for me is there was a very famous UFO crash in Aurora, Texas that happened in 1897 that appeared to be sort of Zeppelin-like in shape. So that would have been 3 years before it officially took flight, but yet after its inception and development. I believe we covered that one a little bit with our conversation with Ryan Wood and the crash retrievals. So that's another great conversation for you folks to check out.
Yeah, one of the sightings I've had, which we want to talk about in the future, was a Zeppelin shape. So I've seen that shape myself.
Oh, wow. Very interesting. Okay. Yeah, we have to have that conversation too, man.
Yeah.
Let's get that going. Yeah, that's sort of the gist of this. It's going to be really interesting in... I believe that this conversation is going to be a combination of nuts and bolts, if you will, and also esoterica and spirituality, because of the nature of what Dee is describing, generally speaking. I haven't had too much chatting with him. We've exchanged a couple emails, but I intentionally didn't want to say or get too much information either. I wanted to, because we do this all unscripted and it's organic. We record these intros before the guest arrives, and then we do our debriefs after the guest leaves. So it's, it's all just sort of naturally occurring, as it were. But I do want to go over a couple of things here for folks out there. I mean, on one hand, I kind of think anyone tuning in has at least an awareness of the crop circle. But I will say first off, too, I personally have never personally investigated a crop circle. I only have textbook knowledge of it, primarily because crop circles usually don't happen by the beach here in Southern California. They're mostly all over in the UK. But nonetheless, I want to go over a couple of things with everybody. So in case they come up, and if they don't, I'm probably going to bring them up because this is going to be a key point. I'm not sure if he's going to be saying like all of the circles are man-made or some of them are not or whatnot. But there are some sort of telltale signs to be able to know which is which. So I want to go over those with everybody.
Excellent. I'm familiar with some of that work from Paddy Greer's work, Mike, but that would be excellent to share with the audience.
Okay, great. It'll just it won't be too long here, but there's like 4 or 5 different things. I'm just gonna forgive me for just looking down while I read it because it's a lot of information. The first one are bends, and I'm not talking about bends when the diver comes up too quickly. These are bends in the actual stalks of the crops. So one feature of authentic crop circles is an anomalous bend in the stems of the flattened crop. According to informed sources, this bend has never been replicated by people. Many crops are fleshy and brittle by nature, and the strongest part of the stem is the fibrous segment at the base. Therefore, any attempt to bend the plant will result in a snapping and breaking of the stem like a piece of celery. This effect applies to, forgive me, sorghum, I believe how you pronounce that one, rye, wheat, barley, linseed, and other crops. The bend may be accompanied by another effect, namely if you were to slide your hand under the section of the flattened stem, you would find them stiff and resistant to being raised, as if they were softened, remolded, and then hardened into this new position. However, the plants remain alive and well. So right there, that's telling us like a real circle versus a fake circle. If the crops are dying afterwards, you know, it's a man-made thing. The anomalous ones, they bend, but they're still alive. And then if you go back and try to like unbend them, you can't, which is pretty bizarre. And next up, there's the walls, right? The sides of the, I mean, circle, we're going to use that term generally because we now, you know, there's all kinds of crazy shapes and such. But other than the shape of the crop itself, the circle-making force leaves no visible imprint. Extremely large crop circles are created with surgical precision and accuracy such that curtains of wheat are sometimes only one stalk wide. That's like less than the width of this pen. You know, I haven't gone out to a wheat field, but, you know, I think you get the idea. It's a very, very narrow thing. Hoaxed or human-made circles are crude by comparison and tend to be undulating and have jagged perimeter walls. So, you know, the anomalous ones are really, really precise, and the human ones, although they might look precise from a distance or from the air, when you really get into it, not so much. We have another three more definitions here. Floors. The most basic example of patterns in a crop circle is the floor. It is virtually always made up of narrow strips as opposed to the 3-foot wide swaths resulting from hoaxsters using boards or wide planks. The spiral shape in crop circles is almost impossible to successfully hoax, for lays may continue in complexity beneath the surface. When the top layer is peeled back, chances are the second layer will be found created in a counterclockwise flow and creating a woven texture, and hoaxsters are unable to do this. Next up, we have the burns, evidence of high heat. Many crop circles show evidence of heat from what might be microwave radiation, which transfers the stem pattern as a shadow onto the soil or the rock. Look for evidence of burning or heat around the stem nodes. I do recall hearing about also electromagnetic anomalies when you're walking into one of these authentic circles. If you have like a tri-field meter or perhaps I don't know about a Geiger counter, I kind of think that would register some type of spike. Perhaps I could be wrong on that, but the tri-field meter is gonna show something, and you can't do that. Mankind can't do that either. And the final thing is the lines. With many crop circles, a straight line is often an illusion achieved by laying the plants in a subtle wave motion. Genuine crop circles exhibit springiness to the point that one can walk over them and feel air gently squeezed between the swirl and the soil.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, there was some new stuff I picked up there. And it's interesting about the weaving nature of the crop circles too. That would take a lot of work to do if a human was doing that. But there's some aspects that I don't think a human could do. So thank you for that background, Mike.
Yeah, I just wanted to put that forward first, so people have a general idea of the complexity of an authentic circle. And when we spoke with Mary Rodwell and Barbara Lamb was talking about us, or she wasn't talking about us. She was talking to us about going to a freshly made crop circle. And I remember her talking about the spiraling, weaving nature of it. And she was totally in awe of it. So another great conversation for you folks to check out if you haven't already. But yeah, I just wanted to put that out there so people have a generalized idea of, the anomalous nature that we're probably going to be touching upon as well.
That's very interesting. So is that part of your training, being aware of that information to discern a real one from a potential fake one?
It is, but it's honestly and unfortunately unlikely that I would probably ever get the opportunity to, unless I fly across the world, which I'm open to doing, but I can't take much more than 5 hours on an airplane as much as I love to fly. So it's unlikely to happen unless somebody in the UK wants to, pay for my business class ticket. Then I will happily go over there and investigate.
Sounds great.
So with that, let's see how this goes. I really don't know 100% of what we're going to be talking about here, but it's going to be pretty darn interesting.
All right, I'm up for this one, Mike. I'll try not to bring too much skepticism, although I think a little bit is healthy. But I'm here with an open heart, open ears, and open eyes.
Likewise, Universal Disclosure Podcast proudly welcomes Citizen D. Okay, Citizen D, welcome to Universal Disclosure. Thanks for spending some time with us and having, potentially a really, not potentially, I think this is going to be an amazing conversation.
It's a pleasure to be here, guys. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. So now I want to let you know we're going to give you as much time as you want or need to go over everything that you want to talk about, and cool. The outline I think is very much aligned with our channel here. We interweave the nuts and bolts of physical UFO craft with the esoteric and spiritual nature of it. So we're going all over the map and trying to connect the dots, and I think it sounds like what you have to say is going to be pretty fascinating. But I want to sort of lead up to the stuff that you really want to talk about and sort of lay a little bit of a framework. And this first question I'm going to ask you, I hope that you are able to answer it without violating any belief systems that you might have, and that'll make sense, I think, when I ask the question. And I also want to delve into what I just even said, because I think that's a pretty interesting aspect too. But what percentage of crop circles, in your perspective, are made by mankind, or what percent are made by not mankind, whichever way you want to answer that one?
I think to answer that question, mate, you have to go through to the birth of the phenomenon, okay, which actually happened in Australia, as you probably know. The birth was the Australian tully nests, which were, as you probably know, that they looked like birthed flying saucers. They looked like literal circles had crushed into the grass, and that was then seen in crop in our country. And because it was in crop and the crop is higher, the circles were much more pronounced. Okay. We believe that those single cookie cutter events, as we used to call them, a lot of those, even to this day, can't be accounted for. But when the phenomenon changed in 1990 to the first pictogram, which, as you probably know, was the Led Zeppelin cover, the whole polemic there changed from birthed UFOs to, it's messages from our space brothers, because in the public psyche, the connection between UFOs and crop circles couldn't be severed. So our contention is that it wasn't a question of aliens getting better. It was the humans then took up the gauntlet of those birthed UFO nests and says, well, we can probably do this ourselves. So the answer to your question, and most serious seriologists go down this path now, is that we can't really account for any pictograms that aren't man-made. So we think all of them.
Okay, I was honestly expecting you to say like 2, 3, 5% or something were potentially anomalous.
No, Colin Andrews used to say that he thought that 20% were unknown, but he's gone down to 5%. But we think that as experts by experience, and that's the key, guys. Once you've actually made one, you can actually see that the scales do fall from your eyes. After making a crop circle, you can go into your next one and say, okay, I might not be able to do this, but I can certainly see how it's done because I've seen the practical, because we're experts by experience. But no, and if you look at the forums, and they'll tell you that it really does look like it's all man-made now.
Okay. I just want to let you know too that, and I said this in the intro. I've never personally investigated a crop circle myself. My knowledge is only textbook, and it's also pretty much surface level. Probably because it doesn't really happen in my area. I'm interested in it, but I haven't really delve deeply into it. So if at some point, I'm sure as we're going to be talking about these, if you mention an area or a year or something, I'm probably not going to really know. But if you talk about the visual, what it looked like, then I'm like, okay, yeah, I saw that one or whatever. So I'm a little bit definitely a novice when it comes to the crop circle
But that's good
history
because
and stuff.
it's good because you won't be tainted. It's good. It's good that you've got that. It's good that you've got that non-experience.
All right. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's all right. Perfect lead into my next question then, especially because of the idea that you're postulating, or my opinion, that they're all man-made. How can you explain? Because in the beginning, I went over, how the anomalous ones are bent in a way that the plant is not, it doesn't die, and it's bent in a way that you can't even unbend it. And then there's like a wovenness and a swirling that doesn't seem to be able to be created by humans, in addition to the high heat that seems to be in some of them, and potentially electromagnetic anomalies. Like, how do you explain all of that weird shit if like they're all made by man?
Well, it's deep, okay. But the first thing I
Okay.
say, as regards bent not broken, there's I'm not sure if are you aware of the BLT project, which was conducted. Okay,
I'm not. No.
the BLT project was a project whereby they took samples of samples of stalks and they analysed them. Okay, and a lot of what the mythology is, a lot of the mythology and a lot of the things that people believe in now are basically from that study, which I must stress was not peer reviewed. It was actually rejected by a lot of people that looked at it. Now, so the first thing, as regards bent not broken, I knew this question was going to come up, so I think to save a lot of your time, although there are many examples, just look at the 2012 Yatesbury pattern, which was done by it was a school project, and it was overseen by Rob Irving from Team Satan. I believe he was Team Satan. It's one of the key crop circle making groups from the 90s. Now, he oversaw a school project, and these kids made a crop circle, which I went to. I went to it in 2012, and at the time I was a complete believer, because that was my stance at the time, and I couldn't account for how it was made. And these bent not brokens were all over this thing, guys. They were all over it. But then when it became publicized as a definite man-made event, aside from a core group of people with vested interests in it not being man-made, who were saying, "Oh, this is just a cover story," people lost interest in it because it was a man-made event. When events become known as man-made, people do tend to lose interest in them. But there were bent not broken stems all over that thing. And as I said to a podcaster in America last week, I defy you, with the farmer's permission, of course, to go and do a single board mark and break every single stem. I defy you to try it, or even to go into your back garden, okay, and crush long grass. It's natural. It does bend, and it implies that you think that we're boarding right at the base of the stem. We don't. We board halfway up, okay. So, being an expert by experience on this, I can tell you that if you were to try and break every single stem, you wouldn't be able to do it. So that is my answer to that.
Interesting. Okay, so from what I'm hearing, it partially it's where you start bending, and potentially where people are testing.
No, it's their perception. People just, you automatically think, don't you, that when we do a board mark, we start at the base of the stem. You don't. You go. Your stump marks are halfway up. But you see, this then leads into the other myth, and this is the big one. And the thing is, guys, is that I believe that there's a serious argument for serious research of this subject, but it's been done in the wrong areas, because we've got the bent not broken polemic, which has been with us now, plaguing us for the past 30 years. But you've also got then the elongated nodes argument. Okay, now the elongated nodes, what happened there was an independent, a genuine scientist was called in by this research group, and he was looked at. He was asked to look over their papers, and he says straight away, you've used the wrong controls. Okay, so therefore your paper is invalid. Okay, because you've got this argument about elongated nodes and explosion cavities, etc. All that happens, guys, is that when a plant is bent, okay, and it doesn't die, its natural inclination afterwards in the next few days is to try and then lead itself towards the sunlight again. Okay, and that's when you have this supposedly supernatural event where if you spoke to any farmer or any botanist, they will tell you that this is actually phototropism, and it's a naturally occurring event.
Interesting. So as an investigator who again hasn't investigated any of them personally, but just with the textbook knowledge, what about the like the heat signatures and the swirling, where there's multiple layers, like one layer goes one way, the other way it goes counterclockwise?
Well, firstly, the heat signatures. I think you're talking about the nodes again, okay? And the node is the knuckle within the stalk, and if I were you guys, what I'd do, I would get most of your research done by looking at blown nodes debunked. Look at skeptical websites rather than confirmation bias websites, because I think that it's actually a yeast which is actually extracted, which is actually released from the plant, which causes that effect. Now, as far as the weave, God, it's so easy to it's so easy. You just physically do it. So when you board a crop circle, you're not in this robotic straight line. You know, you weave it based on where you think the pattern should go, and you do one bit counterclockwise, and you do the other bit clockwise. Or you can actually there's all manner of things that you can do. We're not using clunky, great big boards. We've got like meter boards for. We've got meter boards, we've got half meter boards, we've got square boards. There's nothing that you've just described there with a weave that can't be done by a human being.
Okay.
Well, could I ask, what would motivate an individual to create a crop circle in the first place?
Well, my friend, that's why I'm here today, because this is where I think that it's this is where the real mystery lies. The real mystery isn't, is it made by a physical person or is it made by another force? I think that we are, as with ufology, my friends, ufology, as you know, is not black and white, and I think it's the same with the subject we're discussing today. Because my definition of a hoaxed crop circle is probably a lot different to that of many other people. I believe that a hoaxed crop circle made by people is either done as art, which is fine, no problem with that, or it's done as a commercial venture, so it's part of an advertising campaign, which is fine, or it's done by pranksters that are doing it just for a laugh, or they're doing it to mislead the tourists, or they're doing it to laugh at people. My definition of a true crop circle is one that's done with a respect to the land in which it's placed, because that's a big part of it, guys. We are actually embedding these things in ancient sites like Stonehenge and Avebury and the Longhenges and the Tumuli, and we're doing it with respect to our forebears that were doing stone circles thousands of years ago. But with genuine crop circles, as certainly in my case, we felt like we were compelled to do it. Okay, so there was some sort of external pull, and that's where the real mystery lies, because it's within those crop circles where this portal opens and all this strange stuff sort of exudes in that I'm going to be talking to you about today. So the answer to your question is some people do it through with the wrong motivations, and then other people, and I hope that I fall into that category when I did it, are doing it for something that there's more there are more esoterics to it, and we think we're actually tapping into something ancient within the land.
Okay, thank you. I understand. So you're kind of creating a temple, altar, portal, something like that.
That they're exactly called temporary temples. That was coined many years ago. So you're bang on. You're absolutely bang on.
I'm kind of curious that what got you into making them in the first place?
Okay,
how did that go?
Well, you're going to identify this from the chat we've just had off air. My interest, I've always had an interest in the paranormal, always from birth. I don't know where it came from. It's not really in the family. Always had a deep seated interest in ufology. I mean, really deep. And when I saw Close Encounters in the cinema as an 11-year-old, it blew my head off. But because I was a kid, I kind of thought it was a documentary, and it was like the reason why I say that is because there was something within that film which tapped into this latent thing within my psyche. It could be the collective consciousness, where I thought, this isn't something I'm seeing. This is something that I'm remembering. This is tapping into something that somehow I know. So I was fascinated, and then when I got a bit older, I started to read. Thankfully for me, the golden age of literature for ufology for me was John Keel and Jenny Randall's John Spencer's Jacques Vallée, who to me is the godfather of ufology. And I was reading a lot of the Majestic 12 stuff before it was really a thing, really, because nobody was really talking about Roswell then. So I became very fascinated, but I was looking at it from all angles. I was looking at it from the extraterrestrial hypothesis. I was looking at it from the interconnectivity angle that Jacques Vallée talks about, where it's something to do with the human psyche, which is, I think, we are with the crop circles. So we started to see in the UFO casebooks in this country. Every year we get a UFO casebook, and it'll be talking about recent sightings, recent CE1, CE2, CE3s. But we started to see these crop circle pictures just appearing in there, and they were, as I said, birthed craft. They looked like literally a birth flying saucer had come in, landed, and flown away again. Some of them had concentric rings around the edges. Some of them had a single circle and 4 little satellite circles that made it look like a B movie, science fiction, Day of the Earth Stood Still type craft with the tripods on them. And they became more and more prevalent. And then we saw, as I said, the first pictogram. And at that point, as I said before, the connection between birth flying saucers and, it should really have disappeared at that point, but because these were pictures, and no UFO looks like a landed pictogram, but they were so ingrained at that point that we had this clunky transition from, they're not birth flying saucers, they're now messages from our space brothers, which is something that I've never been able to reconcile that. So in the end, I thought, right, I'm going to go to Wiltshire, and I'm going to see if I can try and delve into it. I wasn't thinking I'm going to solve it. And that is what a lot of researchers do. They come from overseas and they think, okay, we'll get the peasants out of the way, peasants. We're going to solve this thing, that's been with you for years and years, and which I find to be quite patronizing. I went there, and at the time, there was loads. I mean, the year I went, I think there was the first. I studied it for like 10 or 15 years. There was loads of them annually in those clothes. And I used to go and charter a plane and fly over them. And I used to plot them. So if there was 30, I'd try and do like 10 one day, 10 the next day. And I was going in there as a true believer. I thought that they were ET based, or I'd heard stories about it being Gaia and messages from Mother Earth, or it was nature spirits, or it was time travelers. And we actually looked at the human-made crop circles with scorn, because we thought that the mystery was deep enough. I always use the analogy of the magician with the balls under the cups, where it's a big enough mystery with the balls under the cups, but then some idiot comes along and adds another 10 cups. We held human crop circle makers in disdain, and we thought they were just like egotists and, you know, pranksters. And if somebody said to me, well, there's 10 crop circles, but 2 of them are man-made, I wouldn't even bother to go to the man-made ones. But after investigating and going to the area for some years, I decided one season just to take my entire holiday allowance and just spend the whole season there. And it was a big season. I think there was like 30 to 40 circles that season. But I started to hear stories from crop circle makers, generally secondhand, about high strangeness events. They were talking about time shifts, they were talking about UAPs, they were talking about dream driven events, synchronicities that were beyond the realms of coincidence. That so I started to listen to these, and then one day I was overheard saying that I don't care how they get there, I'm more concerned about their profound effect. And at that point somebody said to me, would you like to come out? We're making a circle tonight. We've been kind of watching you, and we think that you're the sort of person that would be aligned to coming out and making a crop circle. Wow. So right. And then I know, so that's what happened. But I promised myself, guys, this is intrinsic. I said I phoned my partner. I said, look, I'm actually going out to do a crop circle tonight, and it was a 2-staged event. So a lot of crop circles that you see, they've actually taken place over more than one night, and they've just not been discovered on the first night. So when you have the argument of, oh, this cannot be done by a team of people in one night, yeah, you're right. A lot of them aren't. Okay, because we just go back and do it. So this crop circle, they'd started the first night. They hadn't had time to finish it. And I said to my partner, right, I'm actually going out tonight to finish off this crop circle. If I don't have a paranormal experience, I'll never do it again. I'm doing it for experience. So we went out and we got it finished, and the team leader was very, very experienced. He'd done it. It wasn't his first rodeo. He'd done loads of them, and he was actually doing it because he'd had missing time as a kid. And he was trying to reconnect with whatever was the cause of this in time. So we did this crop circle. Nothing happened at all. And I thought, oh, okay, the whole thing is just mythology. These are just big heads. It's just ego. I just got to go back. I've now got to go back and look at the subject properly. Just put this to bed, pretend it never happened. But when we finished the crop circle, right at the perimeter edge, I saw a single flash of light. It looked like a magnesium flare. It was at waist level, and it looked like a flashbulb from an old Polaroid camera. And I said to the team leader, oh, damn, we've been watched. That's people taking photographs. I'm going to get a criminal record for this, because making crop circles isn't actually a criminal act, but it's actually a civil act. You're subject to civil prosecution if the farmer wants to prosecute. It's not good for your job, and that's one of the reasons why I can't be seen today. And so this single flare went off, and I thought, oh shit, we've been caught. And he said, don't worry, it's fine. And then this single flare multiplied, it proliferated into 6 lights, and then a dozen lights, all in the same place, and then like 30 lights. And then these lights then spread, and they sprinkled themselves right around the perimeter edge. It was a defined perimeter edge. It was exactly where the outer line was. And I describe it in my Substack as the biggest necklace in the world. It was glistening, and it was incredible. And I just looked at it. I thought, what is happening? And my team leader said to me, don't worry, that is just us being told that this circle's finished, and it's a little round of applause, and it's telling us not to do anything else to it because we might mess it up, and it's time now for us to go. And he looked up and he said, okay, we're going now. You can do your work now. Now, what that means is that for the time that we're in the field making the crop circle, it belongs to us. But the second we leave it, it doesn't belong to us anymore. And I said, T, who are you talking to? And he sort of looked, he just pointed up and he said, that light upstairs. And he said, okay, we're going now. And the second he said, we're going now, these lights just blinked off like a light switch. And that was me. I was hooked. That was it.
Wow.
Okay, I kind of understand where we're heading now, Mike. So the crop circles are a little bit like sigils, and it's got an invocation sort of aspect to it, hasn't it?
Um, when when we went out that first night, they did this little incantation, but which I thought, what the hell are you doing? They were doing this incantation before they went, a bit before they started, when we all sort of joined hands. And the team leader said, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, and it wasn't scripted, but it was like, help us in our endeavors, protect us in our endeavors, and please make sure that this brings joy to those that experience it afterwards, whether it be physically or outside. Um, so yeah, you're right.
I
Uh,
like that you mentioned Led Zeppelin and the cover with those pictograms. So the guitarist from Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page, famously owned and
Oh
lived
yeah,
in
I know where you're
Aleister
going. I know where
Crowley's
you're
house.
going. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you know where I'm heading. So my question is, are they, or at least Jimmy, is he interested in this topic, or what can you tell us about that whole connection?
Yeah, he is. Um, but he's also interested, as many of us are, in the actual area itself. Okay, because what's interesting is that when I interview other crop circle makers, and in answer to your question, Mike, um, it's I started this project in 2018, but I kind of had this feeling to stop. I was having bad luck when I was doing it, and I left it alone, and I revisited it this year. So I've interviewed about 15 crop circle makers, um, but will all tell you that there's something inherent within the land here. Okay, so there's something very magical here, and the locals have been seeing UAPs for generations, hundreds of years, thousands of years. But as Jacques will tell you, it's like cultural tracking, because what we now see is UAPs. They were calling fairy lights, nature spirits, will o' the wisps, etc. Okay, so Jimmy Page's interest in crop circles, and also the royal family were very interested as well in the 90s. His interest is, as I understand it, interconnected with the area, because when I interview crop circle makers that are outside of the area that have made crop circles, whether it be further north in England or whether it be French or Italian teams, I don't actually get any of these strange disaccounts that I'll be talking to you about today. It seems to dissipate the further you would get away from these sacred, ancient, revered sites.
Interesting. If I get Stuart, I'm not familiar with the sigil. What exactly is that? Yeah.
We'll probably go into this in another episode, maybe with Reverend David William Parry. But the sigils are like they're like, how do I describe it? They're like pictures that represent certain angelic beings and can draw them into like a magical circle. So you got the circle aspect as well. So that's another whole tangential subject, but it's an interesting one.
Okay, I
It's
was just curious.
it's also what I forgot to mention was that, as well as reading Jacques Vallée, I was reading a lot of Carl Jung as well. And I think it's very interesting that we are seeing circles both as UAPs and as, you know, circles in the field, because it does connect with the archetype of the circle and everything flowing from and everything flowing to. I think there's a connection there as well.
Yeah, Jung comes up repeatedly when you start exploring these topics for sure. And he's come up multiple times during our podcast, hasn't he, Mike?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he will do. I think that his research is inextricably linked with both the UFO problem, as I call it, and the and crop circles as well.
All right. Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to explore a bit of this paranormal activity that you experienced in your life. So, what things have happened? Uh, have you had communication with beings from outside this reality? Have you had missing time? Any of those kind of occurrences?
Um, I hesitate to use the word beings in this subject. I always think that we are engaging with a higher intelligence. Okay, and this is me being completely level, guys. I haven't got the answers for everything. I can answer your scientific points on the blown nodes and that sort of thing, but when it comes to the esoterics of it, um, I do feel as if we're being guided. But what I don't know genuinely is whether there is a telepathy between the crop circle makers themselves using the collective consciousness, or whether there's something triangulated and it's us talking to each other, but there's something above us. And the reason I say that is because it's the proliferation of synchronicities and dream-driven events that can't be scientifically, looked at, in a field. That is really driving me to where my research goes now. Yeah, we do see UAPs. I did on my second crop circle, after doing that one with T. We saw a pink light in the sky, and somebody said to me recently in an interview that's really interesting, because pink lights also also feature in Philip K. Dick's philosophies, where if you saw a pink light, it was like a download. Okay, so we did once, and we saw this pink light, and I thought it was a chopper, because the proliferation of military bases around these sacred sites is just really weird. Whenever you see a sacred site, there's always a bloody military base close by, as if they know something from, and they built it there. So we saw this pink light, and I thought, oh God, that's a chopper. And then our team leader said, if it was a chopper, there'd be something behind it, and you'd be hearing rotor blades. And there was nothing there. So the pink light started virtually on our first stump mark, and it was there like as this sort of babysitter thing until we finished it, and then it vanished. So, but if you speak to locals in this area, they've been seeing this stuff irrespective of there being crop circles. And I know a lot of people that have come down to this area, been very interested in crop circles, that have left the subject because of the politics and the infighting, and just said, well, we just go now to see night watches, we go to see UAPs, and they're there anyway, because the locals have been seeing this stuff for hundreds of years. But my primary, as well as seeing physical stuff, my primary interest now is, I'll give you an example. When I made my first crop circle, because on your first few efforts, you're just a foot soldier, you're just a pawn, so you're just told to normally do shading and filling stuff in. The outer line is drawn out before you actually go and do it, so it can take an hour to actually draw the thing out, to map it out. And they say, well, just go and stomp in that inner edge until we tell you to stop. Okay, so, and you can't see what you're doing as a relation to the whole until it's actually finished, and you see it finished. So my first few crop circles, we just don't working as a stormtrooper. Okay. But when I decided to go and do my first one, again, I had this latent pull. I had this external, it wouldn't leave me alone. It was like, you must do this, you must do this. And I had this recurring dream where in my dream, it was like an out of body experience. And I was swooping over these two fields, always these same two fields. And it was recurring. This same dream was just like attacking me sort of every few nights. And in these two fields, there were two different crop circles, completely different formations. And I knew it was Wiltshire, but it wasn't a part of Wiltshire that I knew. And there was a guy next to me flying as well. And he was this school friend that I used to go to school with, who I had no reason to think of, because I hadn't thought of him for 30 or 40 years. I'd always wake up and go, why is that guy in my dream? And I kept on dreaming this thing. And then one day I was driving around Wiltshire, and I took a wrong turn. Now, in this subject, guys, wrong turn and coincidence and mistake, they all mean different things. A lot of this is engineered, we think. So you're supposed to do that, or you're supposed to make that mistake in the crop circle. Because sometimes you make a mistake in a crop circle, and it turns out that's the most significant part of it, because it's relevant to the date or the place you place it. So I took a wrong turn, and I found myself in this landscape. It was totally what I dreamt. And I thought, God, this is it. And then I looked behind me, and I saw that the name of the road that I'd taken the wrong turn into was the name of the road that my school friend lived in when we were kids. And I thought, that's a head. What the hell? So that was my impetus. I must get this done. And I phoned my partner. I said, look, I've got these two crop circles. I found the place. I've got these two crop circles from my dream. I don't know which one to do. And I'd assembled a team, and there was a couple of guys from Amsterdam coming down, and there was a couple of guys from London. But but there wasn't enough of us for us to do 2 circles in one night. And I said, I don't know which one to do. And the team couldn't help me. So I decided, it was really worrying me throughout the day. I thought, what shall I do? And then on the night, I said, right, because we start at 10 o'clock in the summer months. We start at 10 and we've got a 5-hour window through to sort of 3:15 before like the sun comes up and the night is removed its cloak. So we got into the field and it was worrying me. And in the end, I went, okay, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to Luke Skywalker this, and I will just let it flow through me. Wherever the first stop mark is, that's the circle we're doing. So we got this circle done. It was great. Got a phone call from my partner the next day. She said to me, "Oh, you were busy last night." I said, "Yeah, we got one down." And she said, "No, you didn't. You got 2 down." And I said, "No, we didn't." And she says, "Well, it's online." And so I rushed to the internet cafe because in those days we didn't have Wi-Fi. And on Google Earth, if you looked from an aerial view, there was this stripe between these 2 fields. Okay, but in reality, that stripe was actually this massive hill. Okay, but you couldn't see it from the air. And it turned out that we'd made my first crop circle in this first field, and another team had made my other crop circle in the other field, and we couldn't see each other because we were separated by a big hill. So both of my crop circles were done, and we didn't know about that team, and they didn't know about us. So I don't know if it was us communicating telepathically or if there was something else which was guiding us.
Dang.
Okay. Yeah, if you're being guided to make these crop circles, then some probably intelligence agency would be interested or monitoring what you're doing, I'd say almost certainly. Has anyone tried to infiltrate your group, or have you been approached by any people?
Yeah, this is actually what happens when I do these interviews is that the questions lead to where I was going next, which is really weird. Now, this is weird, guys, because since I started doing this Substack and researching for this book, the same events, the synchronicities and the stuff that's been happening to me in the fields when I was making crop circles, it's following me when I'm doing this. Okay. So yeah, we have had situations where people have tried to latch onto us, but it's never ended well. Okay. And I'll give you an example. When I say ended well, it's been okay for us, but we had a situation where we had a couple of girls come on board. And this is the same team leader that did the magnesium flares crop circle, and they said, "Yeah, we want to come along." And I said to the guy, I said, "There's something off here. There's something off. I'm not sure if they're journalists. There's something off." Because you get this like sixth sense when you're doing this stuff. It kind of helps you. And he said, "Oh no, they're all right. They just want to see it done." So if I was to say to both of you, I'm going to make a crop circle to tonight, and would you like to come along? You'd be chomping at the bit, but I can tell you it's really boring. It's really boring because for the first like hour, it could be us just measuring out. You don't get to work with the stomping until sort of 25% into the night, into the event. And at the end of the day, what you think is thrilling is just half a dozen people milling about stamping. It's really not very interesting at all. But they'd heard about the spooky stuff, and they said, "We want to see the spooky stuff." And at 2 a.m., one of them said, "This is really, I'm bored out of my skull. Where's the spooky stuff?" And the second that she said that, and this was about 2012, so this was before these things became prevalent, but we saw this, the second that she said that, no sooner were the words out of her mouth, this massive corkscrew spiral materialized out of nowhere behind her. It was 100 yards up. It was the size of a juggernaut. And it was clearly defined. It was turquoise blue with like pink edges to it, and it just materialized out of nowhere and went like a corkscrew and spiraled down behind this ridge. And the whole thing was over in 2 seconds. And this collective whoa went up from the team because we'd all seen it. But it seemed to have strategically placed itself so that she was the only person that had her back to it. So she just said, "What's going on?" And we said, "Well, that's what's happened." And our team leader said, it's not here to do party tricks for you. You've got to respect it to see it. So yeah, we do have infiltration, but and we get people that come in and they're pally with everybody, and they're there for 2 seasons, and then we never see them again. They don't respond to emails or phone calls, and they were really friendly with us, and we still think they were good guys. But we go, with hindsight, who was that guy? You know, and then you look years later and you go, he came from nowhere and then went to nowhere. So yeah, that's my answer, if that makes sense.
It does.
They just disappear, and they're really friendly. There's nothing sinister about them. They're just like you and I, and then they just disappear, and then they don't respond to it. It's like the agency, that program. They just disappear. They just go.
All right, well, you piqued my curiosity when you were about a lot of things actually, but when you were talking about, I think it's like the difference between, let's say, like the UK circles versus Italy or France or Germany or something like that. Have you noticed or observed any type of difference in the people, personalities, or behaviors of those who are, I guess, outside of maybe your
that's
zone?
Mad. Yeah, yes, I have. That's crazy.
Okay.
Because
so, tell me about that.
Right. Well, that's really strange because I'm really friendly with a couple of Italian makers, and they're really good teams. And they came over here in the 2010s, made some crackers. Okay, and I've spoken to them because they're still friends, and I said, "Look, I'm doing this Substack. I'm researching high strangeness events. I'm trying to illustrate to people that this subject is not what they think it is, and I'm trying to illustrate to people that there is a colossal mystery here, but it's not necessarily the mystery that you want, okay? Because it's connected to people." And I say to people, once you insert humans into this equation, the mystery is far deeper than birth flying saucers. The mystery is something that's interactive. And I was severely disappointed when I found out what people are involved. I was really pissed off because I thought that's 10 years of my life wasted because I was a believer. And then I thought, hold on, if you put people in, if you're brave enough to put people in, it's actually a lot deeper. But when I spoke to these Italian crop circle makers, I said, look, I'm looking for strange reports. They had nothing, absolutely nothing. And I said, but surely when you came over here and made in Wiltshire, you must have had an experience then. And they had nothing. And their attitude to the whole thing was far more clinical. That's the key word. They weren't as spiritual about it. They were very clinical. And they were saying, well, we've made over here, so we wanted to make in the Nexus in Crop Circle HQ because we wanted them to be seen by, the people in the area. But so personality-wise, yes, but I think it's also based on their belief systems as well. And they were doing it, but they were doing them as clinical exercises. And they've published papers on how to construct them. They've published books on how to construct them as well. But it just seems to me that I really hesitate to use the word channeled because we're not channeled. We're not special people. We're not anointed. We're not the chosen ones. But I think that as with ufology, where you're much more predisposed to see a UAP if you're a believer, I believe that if you are aligned to this phenomenon and you do have a pre-existing interest in the paranormal and ufology, I think it's much more likely that that's when it latches onto us.
Interesting. So, sort of, I guess my next question would be, has there ever been anyone from your neck of the woods, per se, who goes out to one of these other farther away places and makes a circle or whatever and has something happen?
What's funny is that a lot of crop circle makers have tags. So it's like they're not necessarily conscious, but I can look at a crop circle and say, I know who made that, because that's got his signifiers in there. That's got his little autograph in there. So he's really good at spikes or crescents, or I know who did that. Or if I see a really bad version of it, I'll think, well, that's somebody who's been mentored by that person and they've gone out too soon because that's a really bad copy of Mr. B. Okay. So sometimes you'll see a crop circle up north in Birmingham and it's like the same tropes. It's got the same signifiers, and you go, that's B's work. And you go, oh yeah, but he was on holiday that day, and he was staying with some other circle makers. But no, the answer is no. The further you get away from this hub, and I spoke to Rob Buckle about this. Rob Buckle is one of the true truth seeking researchers. He worked out after 10 years of being a believer, the same as I was, that there was something more human involved. And he went, look, the only way that I'm going to know how to do this is to get under the bonnet and come out with you guys and see how it's done. And that's what he did. And that's brave. A researcher who comes out and, because I've always thought, how can a researcher, and this is getting back to your bent not broken stuff, how can a true researcher know the subject inside out unless they've tried? Okay, you can't say this can't be done unless you've tried to do it. Okay, and this is where the thing about you need lights. You don't need lights. Our eyes become accustomed very quickly. All these tropes that are in the way until you go out and do it. But in answer to your question, the further away that you get from this area, the fewer reports I get. And I think that's really interesting.
So I don't want to sound like annoying or anything like
right.
that with the investigator mind. But what about and then correct me if I'm wrong, I've heard that some of these alleged authentic anomalous circles have some type of like electromagnetic thing going on when you walk into them. You can take like a tri-field meter in and you'll see a spike versus not being in there.
Yeah, okay, right. There was a crop circle made as a demonstration in the early 2000s, and this is a part of the problem that I just don't understand. There was a crop circle done as a demonstration in broad daylight. The farmer was paid, the farmer was compensated, and a crop circle was constructed in real time with researchers looking at it being done. And Dr. Simeon Hein, which is a name that you might be familiar with, did readings. So he did a clean sweep. He swept the field. It was dead. It was flat, and then the crop circle was made, and then he went into the crop circle and he said it was the highest readings he'd ever recorded. But the key to that, guys, is that a lot of the researchers that were there denied being there because it went against the narrative.
Okay, because
you've got to follow the money in this thing. So a lot of researchers have worked out a long time ago that humans are, a primary cause or integral to the process, but they can't change their narrative because, they'd lose the fan base.
All right, so you lost me there for a second. Are you saying that either this person who went in with the meter, it was sort of paid off to say that?
No, absolutely. No. He's genuine. He's
okay.
One of the good guys. He was genuine. So and he recorded the highest readings he'd ever recorded inside the crop circle when it was finished. But some of the witnesses that were there, that were researchers, that were the authors, etc., they went away and they denied ever having been there.
Because Mike, it's against their narrative. So they're stating that these are created by extraterrestrials, and that's when you get these high ratings. But they've just witnessed a crop circle being created by humans with these high ratings.
That's it. Sorry to confuse you there. Yeah.
Okay, so this I wanted to ask this question at the appropriate time, and I feel like this is it. In our email exchanges, you had said, "Unplug the circle." What does that mean?
There's three reasons why I don't want to be seen on camera today. The first is that even though I retired 10 years ago, if I'm connected to a certain circle, it's not beyond there's no statute of limitation here. If a farmer finds out that I was tied to a circle that was on his land 10 years ago, they can still they can still use this as evidence, and they can pursue a civil suit. That's the first reason. The second reason is that I'm presenting a very contentious narrative. Okay, and a lot of people haven't got haven't got the capacity to understand that humans are involved, and we are a key part of the process. And I don't want that trolling aspect in my life. Okay. The third thing is that, as I said to you in my email yesterday, a true crop circle maker making genuine circles, um, we can't claim authorship. Now we have to throw a few under the bus, because sometimes people say to us, do a time lapse video of you making a crop circle, and we've done that. Okay, even then they don't believe it. They say it's fake or it's grays. So we do have to throw the odd circle under the bus for demonstration purposes. But the second that you claim authorship to a circle, you demystify it. The second, like I said to you before, when I was going to see crop circles, if somebody said there's 10 in the area, 2 are man-made, you're not going to bother. Okay. So by keeping that air of mystery in there, where the public is saying, is it, isn't it, it means that it's still a magic circle and it's still activated. Even now when it's not there anymore, it's still special. Now, the dictonomy, this is a really serious paradox here. When we used to go and make crop circles, sometimes the crop circle makers would like spray that angel dust stuff across the crop, and I go, what are you doing that for? Oh, because it's got to look as if it's not man-made. And they'd weave the nests by hand, or they do the basket weave effect, and I'd say, what are you doing that for? Well, it has to look as if it's not man-made, because if it looks man-made, then people aren't interested in it. So this is a paradox where we have to make it look as if it's ET for it to have an effect on people, and that's what I meant by that.
Okay, I wasn't expecting that at all. Honestly, I thought you were going to say something more along the lines of the phenomenal nature, with it being charged in some way when it's done, with the right intentions or something like that effect.
No, that is the same thing, isn't it? It's the same thing, and the fact that we're doing
fair enough.
And the fact that we're doing it in this particular area where the area is charged anyway, with the proliferation of ley lines here. This is, I'm not sure if you guys have been fortunate enough to travel into this area, but it is magic. It's a magical place. And the first time that I actually came here, I thought I just thought I'm home. I thought I'm back. I've never been there before, but there's this latent there's this vibe in the area where the first time I came here, I felt as if there was a knowledge. It's like an arcane knowledge in the area. And the first crop circle that I ever walked into when I was a believer, even if the crop circle hadn't been there, I still had this overwhelming urge of, okay, I understand now. Now, what I meant by that was that I think that there's something within this area which collects, which taps into our collective consciousness, where we are actually remembering where we were thousands of years ago, and the fact that we probably knew more then than we do now, which seems to be we've forgotten something because of this technocratic age, and it's so pure here, that we think that there's an ancient wisdom here that we used to know about, and you go to get a grip on it and it's just beyond your grasp.
What are your thoughts on Stonehenge? Have you been there and felt a similar vibration?
Yeah, I live here. That's where I live. So I used to live in London, but I was pulled here, guys. I was pulled here. It's the same force.
I'm looking at the relationship between stone circles and circles in wheat.
Yeah, well, what we think is that, and this is not just me. This is other people that make crop circles and people that don't make crop circles. We think that we are actually tapping into whatever our forebears knew. Okay, we don't actually have the same knowledge, but we think that we're just it's like jump leads. We're kickstarting the land again. So the when you make a crop circle and you put a certain image within a certain, and it has, as long as it's like a reverential image, that as long as the image is in tune with the area that it's in, it seems to like reinvigorate the land. And if you go to Avebury, that for me is a much more relevant site than Stonehenge. There you really do feel something the second that you go in. The Avery Stone Circle is only about 14 miles away, but I certainly get a bigger vibe there than I do at Stonehenge, because there's not much of Stonehenge left, and you can't get close to the stones. At Avery, you can touch the stones, but at Stonehenge, you can't do that anymore. You're only allowed within a few yards.
How many folks are there, either people or groups that you know of, who make the circles?
Well, the reason I'm doing this now, as I said to you, I started to do this in 2018, but I started to get bad luck, and it was like, you're doing this at the wrong time, because the phenomenon was still alive. There was a lot of it, but it seems to me that now it's as almost if, because of the way it's been misinterpreted, and the fact that there's a lot of politics and infighting and follow the money and all this stuff, it's almost as if the phenomenon was given up. Because last year was an abysmal year. We only had 5 or 6. Probably only 2 of them were worth looking at. See, sometimes you'll see a really bad crop circle. And this is something you asked me in the email, Mike. I think you said to me something like, does the quality of the circle affect whether something strange happens? Do you remember that?
I don't know if I.
Yeah. We see.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What I said, I think, also. All right, so that's a great one. So yeah, what I was saying is, you had mentioned that there's, sort of, I'm going to say good circle makers and bad circle makers, right? With intention wise.
Yeah.
My question there was, is it the pure people only who get the weird stuff happening, or do the bad guys also experience this stuff?
Okay. Right. We're talking at cross purposes there, because you've got the people that don't do it with spiritual intent. As I said, I don't seem to get high strangeness reports from them. But people who go and make crop circles and they're a bit rough, because they're just starting out. It's not as if the phenomenon doesn't say, well, I can't really communicate with you because you missed a bit there. It seems to be that what happens is you get teams that go out and they're just starting out, and they're either doing it from scratch or they've been trained by other people, and the first efforts are pretty abysmal. But because the example I always use is that if you're in a rock and roll band, you can rehearse for weeks and weeks and weeks in the garage, and if you're bad, it doesn't matter, because you do your first gig when you're ready. In this subject, you can't do it. Your first efforts are going to be appalling because you're rehearsing in the fields, and then the people that are laughing at your crop circles are the same people that will be revering you in 2 years when you're really, really good. But last year we had an appalling season, and it's almost as if the phenomenon's given up. I know who made one of the crop circles, because he's probably the granddaddy, and he's getting on a bit now, but he makes one good one a year. But back in the heyday, it's not a close-knit community. It's not as close-knit as you think it is. So there'll be certain teams that know each other, but then a new team will spring up, and then you won't find out about them at all, or you might find out in a few years. So at any one time, we don't know how many teams are out there, because as I said to you before, you can look at a circle and you go, oh, that's Mr. B, because I recognize the tropes. And then you find out that it's someone that he's mentored, and then he's put elements, that apprentice has put elements of his crop circles, and then they develop their own tropes. So the whole thing's it's hard to trace. So we're not like this secret society where we all know each other. That's the answer. We don't know any, or sometimes we'd say, oh, I saw your circle that you made at so-and-so. Oh, that wasn't me. That was the guys that we trained, and they've gone off and made their own teams.
Okay.
Yeah, that happens in music, where someone can copy another musician and sound quite similar initially, and then go off and create their own sound.
Yeah, like Rush. Yeah, Rush started off as like this Led Zeppelin tribute band, and then took about 4 hours, and then, yeah, okay. That's Rush now. So yeah, exactly that. It's exactly that.
Great band, by the way.
I love them.
So I was just going to ask you a good. Okay, yeah. One of the things, and again, I don't want to be too elementary about this or whatnot, but one of the things I'm most fascinated by is the complexity of some of these. Like in the early days, circles, lines, more circles. Okay, great. But now, they've grown to complexity, and you talked about how people get better at doing it. The one that really fascinates me the most is, I don't know if I'm going to say this right, but I think it's called the Arecibo reply.
Yeah.
But because of the intricacies and the apparent the binary code, like, can you really be that? Can somebody really be that accurate to do that kind of thing?
Are you talking about the Are you talking about what we call the pizza delivery, where the alien's
Yeah.
holding the disc? Yeah,
That's it. Beware the bearers of false.
yeah,
Yeah.
that isn't actually the reply. The reply is was a rectangular crop circle that had a reply to Carl Sagan's original
Okay,
message.
that's the one I'm talking about with
Yeah.
with the binary code and the DNA strands.
Okay, well, again, you've got they're two different circles. You've got one where it's imagery, where we've sent an image back with a human on it, and it's come back with a grey and the bulbous head.
Okay,
Is
yeah,
that the
yeah.
one? Yeah.
No, I was actually talking about the other one, the reply to I don't know if Sagan did it, but we sent the golden disc into space.
Okay, so
you're talking about the same one. You're talking about
yeah,
the same
we've got
one.
to make sure. Okay, so if you're talking about the one where it's the grey holding the CD, is that what you're talking about?
That's different.
Right.
Yeah, that's a
okay.
different. Okay, so Stuart mentioned that one, and I was talking about the one with the DNA and
yeah.
I think it had binary code.
Again, I was fascinated by this, and the way that I always go, guys, is if I want to find out the truth, what I tend to do is not Google. I tend to Google skeptic sites because I want to see it from the other side. Okay, and this I think it was the Skeptical Inquirer said that the message wouldn't have reached that particular intended target for thousands of years anyway, and on the way it wouldn't have actually picked up any peripheral traffic. Okay, so just because something is beautiful, and just because something is unexplained, what happens is people think, well, it can't be man-made. Okay, so I would say to you the answer to that. I think that personally that is a man-made formation, and it probably it could be that it wasn't done over one night because that was in an isolated area, and yeah, it's good, but there are pointers against it which say that can't be from an advanced civilization because it wouldn't have reached its target yet. And also, why is it a grey? Why is it the trope of a grey? Is it to assume that every civilization out there, that's interplanetary, they're all great, they're all grey aliens? But I've got back to the original point. There's nothing that I see in that circle that can't be done by a group of people.
Wow. Well, Mike was addressing the intricacy of such a circle, and I am struck by that too, for both the crop circle we're talking about and also the one holding the disc.
Well, the one with the disc, people say it's perfect, but it's not perfect because some of the messages is garbled. Because if you look in the middle of the message, it will say undeciphered or indecipherable because that bit's been messed up, I think. But I have it on authority that wasn't done over one night. And I think that it was done on private land that you couldn't have got to anyway. But there's another school of thought which says that was actually a stunt to publicize the film Signs with Mel Gibson. But the thing, the further you get away from, it's like a crime scene. The further that you get away from an event in terms of physical time and physical space, the more confused you're going to get, because that's when the apocryphal stories come in. And when people used to say to me, we there were lights seen over that circle, and my reflex was always, well, were you there?
Mm.
So as regards to that actual individual crop circle, my bottom line answer is I don't know. I wasn't there.
Yeah,
but it's certainly possible to be done by people. The thing that was confusing me about this subject is that we are told by the New Age movement and the people that follow crop circles, they all have got the same mantra, which is fine, which is we are interdimensional beings. Our true ability is being suppressed. We're interdimensional. We can do anything. We can do absolutely anything. Oh, except we can't flatten corn into pretty patterns. we you can do anything if you put your mind to it. And don't forget also the crop circle season is only between March and September. We've got the rest of the
Right.
year. We've got the rest of the year.
True,
Yeah.
true.
I'm wondering if there might be some relationship in the Nazca lines, because there's certainly a formation that's seen from the sky, and I I presume they're human made too. Have you ever considered the possible connection between that and these crop circles?
Yeah, and there's two things I'd like to say about that. Is that I don't know if have you got a band over there called Killing Joke? There's a British band here called Killing Joke, and they are really bang into this stuff. And the band was formed based on a ritual. It's really deep stuff. And the singer there, Jazz Coleman, is convinced. I think he went into a trance state over there. I'm not sure if he was using peyote or what, but he's convinced that I think he went to the abdomen of the spider in there, and he said it's a portal. I mean, they're definitely man-made, but I think they're incredible. Somebody made a homage to one of those over here called the hummingbird, and it was basically the hummingbird that was in the Nazca lines. And something really strange happened, and I was there and saw this. Animals are obviously working on a different level of innocence to us, which is lovely. And we have strange events occurring with animals in crop circles. And I was at that hummingbird, which was the Nazca line homage, and there was a horse with a rider, like a dressage horse, and it was walking in the field next to this crop circle. And at the second that it got to, it was perfectly calm, perfectly happy. And the second it got to the tip of the beak of this hummingbird, which it could not have possibly seen, it just turned into a bucking bronco and tried to flip the rider, went absolutely mad. And then it kept this terrible display up until it got to the wingtip at the other end. And then it just recovered itself and just walked off. And then I heard another report that I didn't see personally, where somebody said they saw a flock of birds above the same formation, and it seemed to like hit a force field when it got to the wingtip, in the up on the sky equivalent. And they said it just like this whole flock of birds skirted around the formation, so it looked like a Gotham City, bat signal in negative, and then it just flew off. Animals, there's some sort of attunement with animals down here. But in answer to your question, yeah, I think that there's definitely a parallel between those lines and the crop circles, and that's why we've made tributes to them in the fields.
Excellent, thank you.
So Dee, I'm curious, when you have participated in making some of these things, have you ever noticed a change in the energy of the field that you're in when you're? I mean, you talked about the lights and stuff earlier, but have you felt anything?
Oh, this is really interesting.
Like
this is really interesting. I've just written this as a Substack, and it's very, very hard to articulate. But when you see television programs of and they've got a suspect and they're interviewing a suspect in a crime scene. Mm-hmm. Sometimes what you see is you see a room and it's empty, and then you see that same room and there's a time delay, and it's 5 seconds later. There's a glitch, and you don't. The room looks the same, but there's this glitch that you can't understand. Okay, and I've certainly been out in the fields, and I've had loads of reports of this, which I haven't sort of disclosed yet, where there seems to be some glitch at some point during the creation process, where it's almost like a simulation of where you are. It's like a film set. It's very hard to explain, but you get this reality. You get this. It's tiny. It's almost, you don't register it, but you think something's changed, or and that normally combines with a charged atmosphere, and that's when you get scared. Because I used to go make crop circles for the strange stuff, but at the end of the day, I'm very much with Robbie Williams going to Skinwalker and saying, I'm really interested in this stuff, but I don't want to take it home with me. So yeah, I have had situations, both personally and speaking to other makers, where you do get that vibe that something is not right, and or it is, or it's a positive experience, and you think, well, this is joyous, but you can't mentally put your finger on what's happened.
Interesting. Have you ever heard of the Oz effect?
Oh, I love Oz Effect. I
So
love Oz Effect.
is it similar
Yeah,
to
it's
that?
tight, mate. You nailed it. That was Jenny Randall's, wasn't it? Who it's called?
I don't remember who
Yeah,
coined it, but
yeah, she coined it. It's called the Oz Factor, but it's exactly that. It's totally the same. Yeah, that's exactly that. Good point. I'll use that in future. Totally the Oz Factor. Yeah.
so with all the research that you've done, any postulations on how that could possibly happen? Like you got land, whether it's wheat or rye or whatever it is that you do with it, and you fold it in this manner. Like what could possibly make this kind of stuff happen? Any guesses? Or
Well, you got to rephrase the question. I don't understand the question.
okay, so what I'm trying to figure out is like how can a bunch of crops folded down in a specific way in a pattern create any type of energy field whatsoever?
Well, I've got to go back and tell you that we feel there's something very special in this land anyway. Okay, but it just seems to be that if you press certain archetypes and imagery into the fields, that seems to exacerbate the power that's already there. And I think that the nature of the image itself is always is important a lot of the time as well. We just think that we've inherited the tradition of our forebears who are making stone circles, who I emphasize again, knew far more about this stuff than we do. I'm convinced of that. And we just think that we're carrying on their tradition, but it's in barley and wheat rather than, putting stones up. But when you see people that come in afterwards and they report magical experiences, what they can't quantify, that they can't reconcile those magical experiences being in man-made circles. They're in denial about it. They say, I had a magical thing happen, so therefore it can't be a man-made circle. And what happens sometimes is you'll think a crop circle isn't relevant, and then you find out it's relevant to one person, just one person. I've known crop circles where we've gone to make a crop circle, we've made a mistake. And if you make a mistake, the beauty that we've got is that we've got the luxury of knowing that you don't know what that crop circle was supposed to be in the first place. So if we have to change it, you're none the wiser. And then we find out that mistake is the most important part of the circle. And it's like we were supposed to make it because it's relevant to a visitor that comes in and says, oh my God, that's exactly the same as the pendant that my nan sent me from Australia this morning. So that it's special just to that one person. And I one that really freaked me out was there was a Canadian researcher came over, and he stayed in Marlborough some years ago, and he said that they were just about to take their trip back the next day, and his wife said to him, or his partner said to him, what would be the greatest present we can get before we go home? And he said, I'd love a crop circle in the back garden, please. And it was a rented cottage, and then the next day the very image that he wanted was in the back garden. And the thing that really struck me about that one is that I know for a fact that the team that made that had actually had that planned, and that same image and the date and the location planned 2 weeks before those guys had got there. So that's a time correlation where you're going, you question the nature of linear time, don't you? Well, we get that a lot. We had a time distortion once where we went to make a crop circle, and it was a 4-man team, and it was a social event. Because when you keep in touch with these guys, they're still friends now, a lot of them. So we said, let's go for a meal, and we'll make a crop circle, and just do a little one. Just be like a little thank you to each other, a little celebration. And we went into the field, and one of the people who was less experienced, this numpty, had the tape the wrong way around. And before we knew it, we'd actually worked out, we'd measured it out in meters rather than feet. So it was 3 times the size that it should have been. And we very quickly worked out that we weren't going to get it finished. And it got to about 2:45. in the morning, and you can't leave a crop circle unfinished. It's the cardinal rule, and certainly with crop circles that are visible from the road. If it's like in an isolated patch, it's okay. You can go back and do it the next night. But anyway, we knew this was in a prime view. We were in trouble. There was traffic starting to flow through, and we were in deep trouble. And at one point, one of us said, "God, what I wouldn't do for more time." And then we carried on, and it was dark, and we got another hour's work done physically, and then it was still dark. And then I said to my friend M, "What time is it?" And he said, "Oh, it's 3:05." I said, "That's fucking impossible. That's impossible." Okay. And we got this crop circle finished, which was it. The testament to that is that I know that it was impossible for 4 people to do that. And yet what was really strange was that when we then there was a light. That's the one with the pink light. So the pink light flashed off as soon as we finished, and then we got into the cars and we drove off. And then when daylight came, it was almost like a dam that had been held back. And when the daylight came, it was like almost in a flash. It wasn't that slow, gradual transition into daylight. It was if it had been like dammed, and it was like gushing forward. So that was really weird. But I know people that normal people that go into crop circles as visitors, and they report, I was there for 10 minutes, and then I look at my watch, and then I'm thinking, why is the coach back? And then you realise that you've been there for 2 hours. So these strange things do happen to visitors, especially if the crop circle's fresh.
Interesting.
You mentioned 3 a.m. there, just before 3 a.m., just after 3 a.m. Is that a time of heightened activity?
No, that's the time where you're sweating because you've got to get it done.
Heightened activity in that way, at least.
I tell you, this is another weird one. Where time is relevant was that I've got a friend, and and this is the stuff that I'm really interested in, and that I think where we really need to look at what's going on. I got a friend who was in bed after a couple of glasses of Merlot, and he was woken up at midnight. He said it was external, was shaken. It wasn't of my own volition. I'd had a couple of glasses of wine. I was warm. I was tired, but I was shaken awake midnight. And he had a compulsion to go and make a crop circle, but it had to be this particular crop circle in this particular field. And he sort of tried to ignore it, but it's the same pull that you get when you want to go and do it. And he said this thing just wouldn't go away. He said it was like, a cat that wants to be fed. The only way you've got to get up, or a barn door. He said it was like a barn door blowing in the wind. You've got to get up. And so he got up, and he had this image of this crop circle in his mind. He had to go and do it. So he had to get the stuff out of his car. He was too, he was over the limit, so he couldn't drive. So you picture the scene. This guy is like at midnight walking down the road, all right, to a field which is, half a mile away, in full view. He's got his board, and he's got his measuring tape, and he's got his pegs. And he was doing it by himself because he said there's no way I can rustle up a team this time of night. It's midnight. So what you do when you haven't got a full team, sometimes you have to plant tent pegs into the ground, and that's your other team member. Okay, and you lead the tape out from there. Anyway, he was really peed off, and he said, "Well, I'll just do it here instead." So he got to this wrong field, and he said he just felt like he was going to throw up. He said, I felt nauseous, I felt sick, and this nausea wouldn't go until I went to the right field. He said, I got to this field, made this crop circle by myself, which was pretty simple. It wasn't complicated, but it was beyond his capabilities as a one-man team. And he said he got it finished by about 3 o'clock, and he just felt he basically just hid his boards and just fell down on the spot from exhaustion, just fell asleep. And then the next day, or sort of hours later, he woke up, and there was a group of girls just freaking out, and they were in his crop circle, and they were and he was thinking, well, it was good, but it wasn't that good, and they were really freaking out. And he had to pretend that he just got there, and he just was having a kip under a tree. And they said, "God, we found this. Look what's happened." And it turned out they were druids or Wiccans, or they were like white witches. And they said we were over here like 100 yards away last night, and this girl was grappling for this thing around her neck, and she pulled it off, and my mate just freaked out. She goes, "We were supplicating Mother Nature yesterday. We wanted this. We wanted my pendant implanted into the field by Mother Nature. So we started to supplicate Mother Nature last night to get my pendant into the field." And my friend, the penny started to drop pretty quickly. And he said, "Well, when did you start doing that?" And they said, "Well, midnight, of course, when Wicca is its most powerful."
Wow.
And that's the stuff that I really want to talk to you about today, guys, because you can't measure that in a field. That's not a physical trace. But this is where I think, and honestly, this is me being totally honest with you, I honestly don't know if we are interacting with each other through the species field, through the sheldrake species field, or if there's something else at play. That's the only part that I don't understand of this phenomenon.
Dang. All right, I mean, the last thing you just said, everything that you said was really interesting and fascinating, but that last thing you just said sort of clinched it for me for everything that you said up until that point, and now I see what you're really talking about here. That is flipping fascinating.
There's loads. I've got loads of accounts like that, and there's another one which happened, which I can't get my head round. And what happened was there was a team, supposed to be a team of 10 going out, and they were going to make a crop circle which had a relevance to Mother Earth in it. There was a relevance to it. It's a beautiful pattern. And they were in the pub, and I've written this in detail in my Substack. It is on there. But what happened is 10 people, all experienced, knew exactly what they were doing. There was no weak links, because a bad circle, a good circle is as good as its team. Got to about 8 o'clock, and people said, "Right, okay, we'll have one more drink," because we're not drunk. We go out, we're focused. People have got this trope of 2 drunk blokes coming over from the pub because of Doug and Dave. We're not. We're focused. We've all done it before. So there's 10 people, and then somebody got a text message, and he said, "Oh shit!" He said, "I forgot. I'm actually supposed to be on this other team tonight. I can't do it. I'm predisposed to this scrub circle." And then his friend said, "Oh God, I'm doing that one as well. I can't." And then we were 2 down. Now it's like a football team. If you're 2 down, you have to modify the gameplay. Okay, so in this case, it means you have to modify the circle. You have to change it. Then somebody else said, he was called away on a family event. "Oh, I've got a family emergency. I can't go." So we're down to 7. And then somebody said, "Well, actually, I've got the phone number here of a newbie. It's a tourist, but he's aligned, and I think he wants to come out. He's jumping to come out. Let's get him in." And then somebody else pulled out for some reason. Somebody said, "Well, there's no experience on this team. I'm not doing it now. I'm off." Phone everybody else, and somebody said, "I'm going with him because this is going to be a washout." Then somebody else gets a phone call. "I'm in the area. Do you fancy a pint?" "I'm down from Birmingham. We need you here now. We're going to make a crop circle." Long story short, I've written it in a very complicated form. The 10 people that ended up in that field were 10 completely different people. It was like a little chess game where it was engineered. It'd be these 10 people. So whereas the initial 10 people, we all knew each other and we were good mates. When we got into the cars, or this big UV, we didn't know each other. We were all strangers to each other. It was really, really, really awkward. We didn't know each other, and it was really awkward. And somebody said, "Oh, if this newbie said, if my mum knew what I was doing, she was a spiritualist. If she knew what I was doing today, she'd be absolutely freaking out. She'd love this." And one of us said, "Well, you can bring her next year." And he went, "No, I can't. She passed away last year." And there was this chill in the car, and it was like Spartacus. "My mum passed away last year. My mum passed away last year. My mum," and you can,
wow.
yeah. And then when we got to the field, we realized that our crop circle was relevant to Mother Earth, and we actually put something in the lay in the middle. It's like an ultrascan embryo, but that sends shivers through me now.
I just got them too.
Yeah. And you think, what else is at play? And what placed all those people in that area? And what made those other two people go? It's like a chess game. And what we say is sometimes it is a game of chess, but we're not playing it with the pieces. And that's when you think you're submitting yourself to something else. You understand? And that's what I really want to talk about. That's really what my passion is on this subject. It's the stuff that you can't measure. It's not bent, not broken. I'm hoping you'll see that this is a rabbit hole and there's something else going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, when you were telling that story, I don't know, I looked in a direction I don't normally look because something in this room changed, like the feel, the energy or something. It was weird. So I was, I don't know, I was kind of like I was anxious to hear what the result of the story was. And I don't know if that, I don't know what that was, but it was kind of weird. But I'm kind of curious.
This happens all the time.
Kind of curious to just to slightly shift gears a little bit, and like, what is your sort of? I mean, I kind of think I know the answer to this, but what is your position on the UAP phenomenon, like the physical, the craft, as it were, and things like that? What do you have to say about that?
Quite a bit. It's as I said to you, I think that the phenomenon. And I'm speaking as a long-term ufologist. I consider myself to be somebody. I do know the area back to front, but I kind of stepped out in the 90s because I was getting too. You must have had this, guys. I became so evangelical about it that I had to take a step back. And I know people that have gone into crop circles that have just disappeared into it. They've just lost everything. You know, they become so obsessional about it. But in terms of the literature, I was really brought up with John Keel, Jacques Vallée, Jenny Randalls, John Spencer. And they were talking about something other than a nuts and bolts phenomenon. Now, I think that what the locals here have been seeing for hundreds of years is just the UAP phenomenon under a different name. And I'm a strong believer in cultural tracking. I think that whatever this phenomenon is has been following us since our inception. It's ancient, and it manifests itself based on where we are within our evolution. So where our ancestors in Wiltshire were talking about seeing Away with the Fairies, that to me is a grey abduction. They were seeing nature spirits. They were seeing basically UAPs under a different name. And I think that wherever this phenomenon is, it's here, irrespective of the crop circles. And it is probably something that our ancients called something else as well. But it just seems to me that with the UFO problem, and I do think it's a problem, it just seems to track itself 10 years ahead of where we are, which is where we saw the airship sightings before they were airships. I also think it's extremely mysterious that when we had the first, when we had the Mount Rainier sighting with Kenneth Arnold in 1947, the two things that strike me about that is, firstly, it was 2 years after it was 2 years after Hiroshima. Okay, so we were like affecting the fabric, you know, for other entities or for other consciousness. But I also think it's extremely interesting that Kenneth Arnold did not report flying saucers. He did not report flying saucers. He reported crescent-shaped craft, which acted as a circle, as a saucer would if you skipped it across water. Why did we then see flying saucers? But it just seems, to answer to your question, there's something very mysterious here. And I think it's ancient, and I think it sculpts itself around where we are within our evolution.
I would agree. So yeah, I pointed to Stuart while you were talking because wait till you hear the introduction that we've already made about. That was pretty wild. We were talking about allegedly the first crop circle, legend or myth, whatever it was, 1678. So then I was talking about the airplane was invented in 1903, the Zeppelin in the 1800s. But the point is, I had mentioned that there was a crash in, Aurora, Texas, a couple of years before the Zeppelin allegedly officially took flight, although it was in the planning stages and the building stages. I just thought that was pretty wild that you just.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. They say, don't they, that the first man in. They said that the first man in space could have shaken hands with the first man in the air, because they were talking about Neil Armstrong was still alive at the same time as one of the Orville brothers or one of the Wright
Oh
brothers.
wow! Dang.
And it's that acceleration, isn't it? And I think it's very interesting that we come up with there's certain key inventions that we've come up with which are life changing, and yet this is like the crop circles. Separate people around the world have had the same idea at the same time, as if one of them was supposed to have it. We get things in the crop circles where a certain design is supposed to go down. It's supposed to happen, but then three unrelated teams would have it, and then one of us is going to do it, and then we say to the other team, "Where did you get that idea from?" And then we go, "Oh, hold on a minute. Okay, I see what's going on here." You know, it's like it just the idea proliferates until it's done.
Wanted to ask you about cattle mutilations, and by asking this, I'm not suggesting that crop circle makers are mutilating cattle, but I wanted to ask you: is there some kind of connection that you're aware of between those two phenomena?
Obviously, I read Strange Harvest because that's part of the key literature in the 1990s, wasn't it? So I read Strange Harvest. No, I can't see any connection. But what is interesting is that you remember I told you about that hummingbird formation. We had this is I forgot to tell you this. I used to fly over the circles when I was a believer. I used to charter a microlight and fly over. And one day we went to this. He said there's a new one there, but there was this massive like stampede trail through the field. I said, "What the hell's that?" He said, "Oh God, you'll love this." He said there was some cattle, a herd of cattle, 2 fields away from this crop circle, so they couldn't possibly have seen it. And why would they be interested? And they said, as one, they just got up and they stampeded through this fence, and they stampeded over this field, and they stampeded into the other field with the crop circle, and they just nestled their asses and they just sat down within the confines of this crop circle, which is crazy. So there's a cattle connection there, but the only connection was that with Strange Harvest, Molten Hell was reporting UAPs seen around the events. That's the only connection I've got, but we've certainly got nothing like that here.
Yeah, wasn't there a cattle mutilated found a mutilated? I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's getting late here. A mutilated cattle found in a crop circle. Is that what the sort of thrust of the question was?
I don't know anything about that.
No, I haven't heard of that either, Mike. But
No.
I just meant just trying to correlate strange phenomena together and just looking for patterns.
It's the UAPs that I think the UAPs is the only connection there.
Right.
But I know people that come here just to see the UAPs, and they've got nothing to do with crop circles. It's just released here, you know. And people also say, "Well, I saw orbs over a crop circle," and they think that means it can't be man-made. But sometimes what I know of people that have made crop circles and then look behind them thinking, "Oh, nothing weird happened that time," because you don't get a weird event every time, guys. It doesn't happen every time. But I knew one guy that made a crop circle and he said, "Oh, nothing happened there." And he looked back and there was these orbs just and this like scale-electric 8-figure track sort of thing. Just he said it looked like they were trying to audit it for compliance purposes. They were trying to see if we'd missed anything. And I had another one where nothing happened, and this is something I was involved in. We made a crop circle, nothing happened. So okay, just notch that one up to a boring crop circle. And then we came out, and then we found out that somebody on the towpath at exactly the same time that we left, because we knew it was 10. We knew it was like 10 past 2. We got it done quickly, so we looked at our watches, and then we found out that somebody on the towpath a mile or two away reported at 10 past 2 this massive when when you light a gas cooker, you've got that blue flame. He said this massive blue flame leapt into the sky, and it went to cloud level and then simmered again. So we get those correlations, and we don't know about them at the time, and then we find out afterwards. That's interesting. Sometimes we don't know the full significance until a month after, or a story filters through, and we'll think, "Oh, nothing weird happened there," and then we'll get a story which completely blows us away because it's relevant to what we've done. But it takes a month for the story to circulate through the grapevine, so to speak.
Also, I can see that the symbol might be intended for the observer. So you might be creating that symbol under direction from.
You're absolutely right. I was asked by a podcast 2 weeks ago, "What's the relevance of this symbol?" We said we don't know. We're just the stormtroopers. We're just the pawns, you know. So it goes back to the message that you said about the servo message. We'll make a crop circle, and then we don't know the significance, and then we find out it's significant to one person, or that it's really important to the area. Sometimes you'll make a mistake. You'll go, "Okay, we're going to make it here," and then there's a roadblock, or there's something that stops you getting to that location. I know of a situation where the team's car broke down, and they said, "Well, the AA can't get here for 2 hours. We might as well just have a crack here and go over this stone. We'll do it here instead." And then they found out that was where it's supposed to be. And then when the A turned up, the car started first time, which I thought was really funny. I've just written a Substack about this guy who was in Gloucestershire, and he was loved Wiltshire. He loved it for the same reason as I do. He just came down. He said, "I'm home. There's something special here," and he said that he got this poll at 1 o'clock in the morning. "You have to go to Wiltshire," and he went, "Yeah, I'll go tomorrow." It went, "No, you don't. You go now." So he came down here, and he was a believer at the time. And he said, "I normally stay in this little hidey hole that I've got down this alleyway, and that's where I park up in my UV, and that's where I sleep." He said, "But I got down here, and my sat nav, which was set to Bluetooth, and it said when I got to the end of this road that I normally go to, it said turn around where possible." And he thought that there was a flood further down, or a tree had fallen or something. So, and it took him to this place, to this byway, and it said, "You have reached your destination." And he went, "Well, no, I bloody haven't." And so he started off again, and he went around the other side of the road just in case there was a blockage. Again, "You have reached your turn around where possible." Then, "You have reached your destination." He said 6 times. He said, "I was so tired. It was like sort of 3 o'clock in the morning. I just 6 times, you've reached your destination." He's at this nondescript area. And he said, so in the end, I just turned the bloody thing off, and I went to my original hidey hole. Nothing was wrong. There was no blockage. Fell asleep. The next day, like 8 o'clock in the morning, his mobile phone is rattling off his dashboard. There's a new circle. So you can guess the rest. It took him to the original place, and he got out, and he said, "If I'd have just pigeon stepped it, okay, I'd have seen the team at work making the crop circle." It was exactly the time. But we thought that it was really funny that potentially NHI was directing a believer to a situation where he would have found out that they were man-made. Because as you probably know, the cosmic joker is involved here, and the phenomenon does have a sense of humor. It does do funny things, you know.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. So it just dawned on me, like, you potentially are the only person who can really do this type of research, I think. And even then, it seems like it would be pretty challenging, because it's not like, I mean, you can interview people and stuff, but you can't, it would be awesome if you could, like, document a circle being made and have phenomenal stuff happening too. But I suppose that's probably against the rules, as it were, right?
Do you know what I honestly think would happen there? I don't think anything would happen, because the phenomenon's going, it's not a party trick. Yeah. I think the same thing would happen with those two girls, where the second you go to start and do that sort of thing, it goes, "I'm not playing," or somebody within the investigation team isn't aligned. "I'm not playing." But you're right. This is the cool stuff, guys. This is the stuff where you go, "What's going on?" You know, it does have a sense of humor, and it doesn't happen every time, but sometimes you think nothing strange has happened, and then you find out later that you made a mistake in the crop circle, and that's the most mind-blowing part of it. It's a rabbit hole. It really is.
That can happen in art when you're creating a piece of art and you think you're making a mistake. David Lynch talked about that in Twin Peaks, where an actor was it was someone who was setting up the scene, was accidentally in a shot, ended up casting that person in the show.
Yeah, I think it's the same phenomenon. People
Hmm.
say the same thing about Stephen King being in a state of inebriation when his best stuff comes to him, as if that is just. I'm not endorsing it, but as if that's a change in consciousness which allows the thing to flow through. I also think, and this you can take this where you want, but people have said to me, "Why did we go from single circles? Why did we go from single circles to this Led Zeppelin cover? Then it got better and better and better." That the people with the narrative will say, well, the aliens decided to reveal themselves for a series of progression so that our minds didn't get flipped too much. I think that's just rubbish. It was just humans getting better. But I've got this. I had a really serious chat with a long-term crop circle maker, and we've got this theory. It's just a theory, but I think it might explain something, and that is that with those single circles, those Tully-nests and those single circles from like the 1980s. If you listen to reports of spiritualists and seances and Ouija boards and people that go into a trance state, if a spirit comes through, you've got this always the same thing. They say that they're exhausted. They've just got enough. They just had enough energy to pass through the gap, pass through the gauze between our consciousness and their consciousness. They're exhausted. The messages are very garbled, and then they and then they go. I'm tired. I've got to go. It's there's one school of thought that says that those single circles were the real thing. They were the genuine phenomenon coming down, going through the gauze, drilling like the crop circle, because they weren't boarded. You can't do that with boards. They were like whisked. They looked like a drill had come down, God had taken a drill from above and just whisked the circle and taken up again. You can't do that with boards. So I've seen events where the crop is bent up at 6 inches. You cannot board that. And I think that's the genuine phenomenon. And it's almost as if it was saying to us, well, here's the basic circles. And then we as humans, we pick up the gauntlet and go, well, we can do better than that. And then the second that we're starting to make them, then it floods through with this subconscious stuff and the direction.
Okay, so
it needs us as a component, and we're not necessarily volunteers to it. We're just literally just pawns to it,
Okay, so did I just hear you say what I think you said? Because it's basically what I just heard was that the first crop circles that showed up, you believe were, whatever NHIs.
Yeah, I think,
and then humans came in after that. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Because it didn't have it didn't have the tools to do the stuff that you love. The CD crop circle. It just had enough to do this, and then it's like my mate called it a recruitment drive, where we go, okay, well, we're going to pick up the gauntlet, and then it goes, yes, that's exactly what we wanted. Thank you very much indeed. We've got a task force now. I know it's a crazy concept, but if you think about it, it kind of does make sense.
Interesting. Just to go back to what you said in the beginning, because that was news to me. I don't know if Stuart, if you heard that, but the first crop circles were actually in Australia.
Yeah, they were called Tully-nests.
That's news to me. I'm going to have to look that up. Another thing I wanted to quickly reference was you really gave me a piece of the puzzle there, because I was looking at why UAPs predominantly around military bases. It's the other way around. The military bases being put in locations, and there's one here called Pine Gap.
Bang on, yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with Pine Gap. It's in the middle of the country where no one is. It's not very far from what used to be called Ayers Rock, which is now called Uluru.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah. People say, that always military bases around crop circles. What do you think was here first? That we had the ancient land. I really think there's something to it. The military are definitely interested. I've got footage of a crop circle that I walked into that I had no part of, but it was my It was this first guy, and they were virtually landed in the crop circle. They were actually landed. It wasn't. I know that they used them for GPS exercises, so it's pretty boring flying around Wiltshire. It's all the same, And the commander would say, go to these coordinates and report back what you've seen. It's crop circles. It's just so they're not bored. But having said that, they do seem to take a very unhealthy interest or healthy interest in it. And we went to make a crop circle 2012, 13, and we were just a couple of stumps in, and I saw this pink light, and I thought, oh, it's the Philip K. Dick again. And but it wasn't. Then I heard, and then we heard the choppers, and this thing buzzed us, and it went to land where we were. It was like it was having a laugh with us. And I said to my friend, "How the hell did I know we're here?" He says, "Well, they can see the heat from the engine where we parked up the road." And we just scarpered. I think we left the boards there. We were so scared, and we had to go back and get the kit the next day. So we're not sure if it was just the military having a laugh with us or just warning us off. So you can't do. I know definitely that a pilot was seen. There's definitely a verifiable report from a friend of mine who said that a pilot had seen in his night vision a team go into a field, and he thought, "Oh God, I know what they're doing." And the second they was in the field, massive light went above them that he saw on his radar. It's massive. He didn't stick around to go back and see if it left at the same time as they did, but he said it was really interesting that he saw these people walk into a field and then this massive light as soon as they were in the field and making that first mark. It's definitely a correlation, I think.
I'm also curious, when you were saying that you started to, I don't know if I'm getting this right, but if you started to do the research or you started to do the disclosure aspect in 2018 and then you stopped. Oh,
yeah, I had bad luck. And I was writing that with a world famous musician who's a friend of mine, and he just said to me, "I'm having weird experiences at home. I'm out." And I actually revisited this 6 months ago. And the thing is, guys, I don't know why, but the planets align where it just said, "Look at this thing again." And I found now I don't have the bad luck, but I was having similar bad luck in 2018, and we just left it alone because we just got a bit spooked. Because at the end of the day, same as the UFO problem, we don't know what the intent is with this thing. I spoke to a European podcast last week, and he said, we just have this image of Grace being cuddly and everything's friendly, but we don't know what we're messing with. And sometimes I know people that have put the wrong symbol in the field. It's dark. They put a dark symbol in the field, and then dark stuff has followed them home. We still don't know. That's why I tried to make sure that my messages and the crop circles that we made were as positive as we possibly could make, and that they were reverential to the land, because I've got some horror stories that I won't go into because I don't like to attract this stuff back in my life. But I've got horror stories from crop circle makers that have done the wrong thing and then had a little slap on the wrist afterwards, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. For the record, I don't think the Greys are cuddly, and
no, I don't either. People do, yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you know this answer or not, but I want to, what was going on in 2018? I'm wondering that.
I think my theory is that the phenomenon was still thriving. There was a lot of crop circles still being seen, and we've had this slow deceleration. We had a bad year last year, and it's almost. I've got a friend who's very famous crop circle maker within the fields, and he said to me yesterday, he said, "I don't think you're getting any pushback because it's almost as if the phenomenon has failed, and it realizes that it's failed in its task with the infighting and the politics and the narrative. It's all gone the wrong way, and it's like it's given up." And it could be wrong. We can't second guess this phenomenon. We could have 60 circles this year, but it seems to be that in this age of disclosure, it doesn't hurt for somebody like me to come as an expert with experience and say, we can look back on this golden age now of crop circles, and we can tell you that there's an element of it that you haven't looked at because you weren't prepared to put humans in. But when you put humans in, it's a rabbit hole, and it's much more interested than just landed flying saucers and messages from Space Brothers. That's why I'm doing it now.
Wow. I appreciate it. Thank you. That's it. I don't know. It just I've had other conversations with other people, and um, it's been said that even though some of these things don't seem like they're connected, they are in fact connected.
I'm totally with that, and most ufologists are totally with it as well. I think that the most of these things are interconnected. Even going to Bigfoot, I think it's connected. You know, there is it's coming back to this thing presenting itself, and in that I know somebody that saw that had a UFO sighting, and she said that she saw a being, but she said it was like the doughboy in Ghostbusters. She said it was a ridiculous image. I said that's the closest that your brain could get to processing it.
Oh
Okay,
yeah.
so that was probably, you were probably seeing the phenomenon in its true form there, but your brain couldn't actually connect the dots, so you saw this scrambled image instead. I really do think that the key to the UFO phenomenon is that there's an interaction with the human psyche. I think that I don't think it's CT. I think it's coexisting with us. And I think that this whole thing about, I said to you before about Kenneth Arnold, it seems to be as if we're messing about with stuff with, you know, the collider, and with like Hiroshima. We're messing about with stuff which could have an effect on something which is coexisting with us. So it manifests itself as aliens to try and get us back in line. That's my belief. I don't think it's ET. I think it's been with us since the dawn of our inception, and I think it's been tracking us. And that's why we're seeing what we're seeing now.
That's a very interesting take. I've not heard that before, but it makes a lot of sense.
A lot of serious ufologists are going down this path now and saying it's not ETH. Don't look at nuts and bolts craft. You know, why are we not seeing contactee experiences anymore? Where are the Nordics from the 50s?
Let me
You
interrupt you
know,
just for a second, Stuart. What's going on with you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's weird. I got
Um,
weird tech glitch going on.
yeah, I don't know what.
Do you think it's back to normal?
Um, I think so, but I did mess with it a little bit, so I just gotta clean it up.
Okay.
There we go. Now we're back to normal. Okay, cool. D is still with us.
yeah.
All right, cool. All right, well, yes, I don't know where you. I mean, I just kept rolling the whole time just for the sake of it, but I don't know where we really got funky, but we'll definitely cut that out. But what we were talking about, the phenomenon. D, if you don't mind just restating the phenomenon, potentially is showing itself as ET. Keeps in
Yes,
mind.
it's this is, guys. Just look up cultural tracking. Jacques Vallée talks about this, and he says that it manifests itself based on where we are within our evolution, and where we used to see the airships before they existed. It tracks us, and I was saying to you, why is it we had no reports of greys in the 50s? Have they just turned up? Where have the Nordics gone from the contactee experiences in the 1950s? It seems to, and also, where is ectoplasm that we had in the spiritualist day? Where's it all gone?
Mm.
It's like trends and fashions which follow where we are. Why does this stuff just come and then disappear as we get a little bit more involved? A little bit more involved. It doesn't make any sense if it's an ET phenomenon, or if it's a linear, spiritualist phenomenon. I just think it's something which is mimicking where we are and just placing itself a few years ahead. And this is not me, guys. This is the serious ufologists are going down this path now, and they're saying we started off looking at George Adamski's scout ships, but now we're looking at UAPs that are ethereal. Why are we not seeing structured craft anymore? Why are we seeing lights now? It seems it's almost as if we can make that structured craft now, so therefore it's not mysterious. So we'll give you lights instead. This is not new, guys. It's something where a lot of the serious researchers are going down this road now and saying that this is a manifestation based, and it's much more in line with the human consciousness and our psyche. Carl Jung, it's the same thing.
I've definitely heard that, and there's a couple folks out there who have sort of put a timeline of the shapes of the different craft have evolved over the years. It's basically similar to what you were sort of just saying, but it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Dee, we definitely appreciate your time. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about at this point that we didn't cover yet? Or
No, I mean, what I'd say to you is that I'm not making any money out of doing this, and I'm doing this because I just feel pulled to do it. And if you want to look at my Substack, it's just itcantbepeople.substack.com, and I'm collating these reports and I'm putting them online, sort of every week. But another reason why this book's taken so long to do is that when I do speak to the people that have had high strangeness events, what's encouraging is that they're all the same. So therefore, I can only put one reported in 10 because they're all the same. So even though it's tedious for me as a writer, it does show me that I'm on the right path here, and that certainly with the synchronicities and the coincidences, you think they're personal to you. And that thing that I told you about the dreams with the two fields, it's not the sort of thing I would have related in a Substack. But then I speak to other crop circle makers, and they've had precisely the same thing with a small variant to it. But I think I've got to sum up by saying that I held human crop circle makers in the same disdain that many of your listeners will hold me. Okay, and I get it. Don't worry, I get it. I was 10 or 15 years into the game before I started to realize what was really going on. But as you touched on there before, you have to be an expert by experience. I'm not really prepared to entertain people that say this can't be done unless they've tried to do it themselves. Because even though I can't do, a lot of crop circles are way beyond my abilities. When you've made a few, you can then go into a complicated one and say, well, I can't do it, but I can certainly appreciate it. I can appreciate how it is done because I've looked under the hood, But if you do insert us into the narrative, the mystery is far, far deeper than just it almost makes aliens like a mundane explanation. And that's really all I've got to say.
Wow. For real. Wow. That
was wonderful.
I mean, you gave an outline before, and we were definitely interested, but that was so much more than I actually thought that this was going to be. I mean, thank you for sharing that with us. I really do.
That's a pleasure. I'm sorry that I was reserved in our emails, but I was really determined that this is the message that got out. I was a bit snappy with you.
Oh no, I appreciate it. I was also trying to be reserved as well because I wanted our first interaction to be sort of live and captured, as it were. I didn't want to hear too much from you, and I didn't want to give you too much either. So I appreciate your sort of going along with that.
Good. All right. Okay, we can part as friends. That's great.
Absolutely, yeah.
Of course. Yeah. In fact, I would say much love and respect to you, Dee. I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
That's a return, guys. Thank you so much for today. I've really enjoyed that.
That was awesome. And if ever in the future, if you have more things, more research you ever want to present, you're always welcome to reach out back to us as well.
What I'll do, guys, is when the book's ready, I'll then send you a PDF, and then we can have another chat after that, if that's okay.
Oh, of course. Okay,
yeah, thank you. That'd be awesome.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much, guys. It's been a gas. Thank you so much.
All right. You too, Dee. Take care.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, Reverend Stu. I don't know what really just happened there, especially at the end. There's probably a part that we snipped out, but we'll get to that in a second. But in fact, I'm getting goosebumps right now. Just think when Dee was telling the story about the 10 crop circle makers, and then it ended up being 10 completely different ones. The energy in the room that I'm in changed, and I heard a snap in the wall. Okay, something building settles or whatever. But it felt like there was, I don't know, something was going on here. It wasn't bad or anything, but it was just different. And I don't know.
Yeah, there were some intense moments for me during that conversation too. And I also had a technical glitch at my end a bit later after the point you're talking about, which you'll probably snip out. But that's never happened this whole time we've been doing this show.
Yeah, you turned. Well, I mean, we use green screens, right? Spoiler alert, and but as if people didn't know that already. But you had a green halo around you, but then you also at one point sort of turned like black and white, and one thing that, I mean, I mentioned it before our little break to you, but I wish I would have said it with D still here. So D, you're going to hear this after the fact. But what you didn't know is before we even logged on and did any of this, I was going to text Stuart and say, we've got this person who's incognito. Maybe we should flip ourselves into black and white mode. The studio will still be in color, but we'll be in black and white. And then I was like, no, that'll be taken the wrong way. And you ended up turning black and white.
That's very bizarre. I got to say, Mike, I'm really impressed by that interview. I know I came in with a bit of skepticism, but the gentleman was highly articulate, very, very knowledgeable on the subject. And he's even filled in a few puzzle pieces for me. So that's always a win for me.
Yeah, I was very, very impressed. And also at the end, he brought up a point that is very interesting and I don't think I've ever heard it before. Like if whatever this stuff is, I mean, we're sort of going back to Jungian shadows again, I guess, but potentially our own collective consciousness creating these things, and it's evolving as we're evolving. However, D, I'd also like to ask you too, like, how do you reconcile the physical beings in the people who are being taken and they have marks on their bodies or things implanted in them or whatever? It's a rare kind of thing, but it happens. And how does that play into the overall view of what we're talking about here?
I think Dr. Stephen Greer, talks about military abductions being attributable to that kind of occurrence, and that might be what's going on there. It's a big mystery.
I mean, I've been objecting to that every time it comes up, but I mean, I can see maybe some of it, but not all of it. I mean, maybe based on what we just said today or heard today, maybe it's I don't want to believe, right, that the military is behind all of the abductions, but I don't know. I mean, there's plenty of like implant cases. People have these implants removed and such, and then they get analyzed, and they're materials that just are not available to us here. That I don't think that's the military. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Might be able to interview someone on that topic in the future, which would be fantastic. Maybe something will present itself. I was also tempted. I wanted to mention this to you later that I was half tempted to ask him who that internationally well-known musician is who's interested in this topic, because I'd love to talk to that person, I can tell you.
Yeah, I sort of had the same thought. So if that's a possibility, reach out to us again, and and we can do. Well, I mean, I don't know. We can't really do incognito at the same time as being an internationally well-known person, right? But we'll figure out a way to be respectful. But yeah, I think I say this almost every time. I wasn't expecting it to go there.
That's what I love about what we do here. I get it stretches my consciousness. I'm more expanded because of this, and I've got new issues to contemplate relating to this topic, which I'm really grateful for, as always.
Yeah, likewise.
That was a good one, Mike.
Absolutely. Yeah. So thanks, Dee, for reaching out. That was awesome. So as always, folks, thanks for joining us along this journey, and hit that like button, give us a comment, share it, do all that good stuff, and help us spread these conversations all over the world, because we do have a global audience. I mean, we might not be the box office smash hit views on the YouTube channel at this point. We do get a respectable amount, and audio only is growing. But I see where the people are tuning out. We have a very global audience.
Yeah, well, it's kind of niche what we're doing, but I am learning from this journey, and I know that other people are, because our viewership keeps expanding. We're very grateful for that.
Absolutely are. So thanks so much, and we'll see you back here real soon.
Much love.